We got on the taxpayers page this time. Since the last time, it did not want to go on the taxpayers page. And it shows it's still starting. So hey, we're in here live now. Let's see if it made it to the taxpayers page.
So it's showing you live somewhere. It's on, yeah, it's on the taxpayers page.
Alrighty. Hey, well, I guess we got this here right. Boy, I'm gonna tell you, Facebook has been uphill the last few weeks here. Anyway, welcome to another edition of the Hidden Agenda. We have Blake Mitchell back with us this time. Our first go around, we had some problems with
Technical difficulties.
technical difficulties. There we go. I had technical difficulties trying to get connected right now.
Man, you should do like the rest of the board and just do away with this mic and camera stuff. We'll just talk real low and nobody can hear. I'm just messing. I'm just kidding.
Damn, you're already acting like an old. Anyway, let's see here. I'm not a. I don't know if that's the one that I'm supposed to be on here. Give it just a second here. Get a couple more people involved on it.
Make sure it's still showing. Yeah, it's still showing on there.
All right. You show how many people logged in yet? Well, I'm still not.
Mine's not showing anybody on it right now, but it's not showing any viewer count. It shows 8 views, but it don't show any like actual count.
Okay.
So
All right. Hey there, Penny. All right, we got some people lined up now. All right, let's get back in here. Like I said, we got Blake Mitchell back on with us this evening. Blake was here, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago.
a couple weeks, yeah.
And we had some technical difficulties, and we've been having a lot of problems with Facebook lately. We tried 2 or 3 times a day to get this evening to try to get logged in. It finally went through like the third or fourth time. And if you guys were watching last time when we had Tim Rhodes on last week, heck, we were 10 minutes late getting started because we just couldn't get connected.
Right.
So anyway, we deal with the constraints of what Facebook has. Hey there, Matt. Got you, brother. So anyway, what we're going to do is, like I said, last time we had Blake up here, we had a lot of problems with audio. So
A lot of people complaining they couldn't hear me or anything like that.
yeah,
So
we're going to try this again.
Yeah.
I'm going to let Blake do his spiel. We're going to go through the questions, and then we're going to address some other stuff afterwards, kind of away from the campaign side. Just well, it's not really away from it, but just a couple other things.
Right. All right. So I'll just tell you. So I'm born and raised here in Henderson County. Like I said, I'm young. I'm not old and gray-headed like the rest of them on the board. I'm 32. I've got a wife and a little daughter that just turned 2 in June. Like I said, I've got a degree in accounting. I've got minors in economics, supply chain, finance, and marketing. I'm a licensed practicing attorney here in the state of Tennessee. So I've got a pretty well-rounded understanding of not only business but contracts and being able to negotiate and work within the parameters of them. And I think that's where largely my skill set will come in handy with navigating the different various issues we have facing the city right now, from not only finance and being able to do strategic sourcing or purchasing, but also navigating some of the issues we have with other agencies, whether it be TDOT, the county, and working with them. And so I want to be able to, like I said, help move us forward, but also not make us to where we're in such far of a dead hole that we'll never see the end of it. That's what I've told a lot of people. There's a lot of constraints to what we're going to be able to do or to actually fix with our infrastructure. It's one of my main concerns is getting essentially the city back to basics of government, which is infrastructure by and large. That's what they're supposed to do, is the necessities for everyone. By and large, the main things that are just terrible, I would say, are the streets and our stormwater runoff. They're absolutely terrible. But being able to set up either contracts with TDOT and negotiate them so we can do something with our state roads that are also our main thoroughfare through the town. Like I said, from not only stormwater issues, we've got roads that are caving in and everything else, but we also have, like I said, just massive potholes and the streets just falling apart. You can barely drive up and down half of them. And so, like I said, I want to get us back to taking care of the main things that we all use every day instead of working on some, essentially frills, that benefit more than likely a select few than it does, everyone.
Yeah.
And so that's my spiel. Like I said, I think I've got a good skill set to help us navigate some of those issues. I've also worked, I worked for Paul Allen England over there in Decatur County for a little while, and at that time I was working a large part with the county, with delinquent property taxes, and also with the city, and within that, the actual utility districts. And so, like I said, we did a lot with helping them oversee different grants and things like that. And so I understand too who can help them that's available essentially through the state, so CTAS and MTAS, and that, which is largely through the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, doctoral students, things like that, that puts information together and help these counties and cities. And so I know like I said, we can go for help, and also who will help us, right, for grants and things like that. I think there are some grants out there, they're 100%. We got to be careful with them, but they can help us fund a lot of these necessary improvements we need. One of the ones we talked about is the actual sewer treatment facility. That's one of the things that I think is going to have to be addressed here, sooner rather than later. That's going to be a big expense, but I believe there are grants out there we can, once again, 100% grants, not something we necessarily have to match. And like I said, that will help with that. There's also some that, come with conditions. We got to be somewhat leery with them and balance it out to see if whether or not the grant's worth it versus the conditions we have to imply. We're going to hamstring ourselves essentially. But I think my background, like I said, with also in sourcing, working in international paper and doing things for General Motors and other consulting gigs, I have a background and skill set that can navigate some of these issues. And so that's why I've told people this and hope that they can see the value that I can help bring there. With those issues, because by and large, we can't fund a lot of these things in house. We don't have the capability to do that, and so we're going to have to go and utilize the resources we have. Otherwise, like I said, we're just going to continue to essentially dilapidate, lack of a better word. Also, kind of one of the things that brought us together and got me actually running for all this was largely TDOT and the city with Mason Rhodes, like I said, out there giving him kind of a hard time and people not being able to answer any questions. If anybody, like I said, maybe wasn't paying attention to those podcasts back before, what happened was essentially TDOT said that those driveways that they actually designed and installed when they widened the highway, they said those weren't commercial driveways, those were private access, and told the city that the city needed to barricade his driveways and withhold his certificate of occupancy. And if they didn't do that, that the state was going to withhold fuel tax funds from the city. And I'm like, whoa, that is that's coercive, wrong on so many levels. And like I said, and this was just their engineer doing this. Like I said, their legal counsel had no idea this had happened because obviously, that's 100% illegal. You can't do that. And so fought back against them. Like I said, Mason's now got everything paved and everything like that. But that was one of the things that frustrated me when he come before the board in December of 23 and laid out, here's my plans for my building, metal building, 2x6 studs. And, they asked him, like, so what's your parking lot going to be? Because the surveyor hadn't outlined it. He had said, 60% of the lot's going to be gravel. And, all of them, yeah, it sounds great, look forward to it. And he showed his entrances off of Highway 412. Which, then they added that extra one in on College Drive because, TDOT had said they're going to cut them off. And so then come around to June of 24, almost 6 months later, mind you, in May, or it was either April or May, was when he was done with this building. He called the city. City told him, go ahead, you got to make money, blah, blah. They kind of mentioned to him at that point that it sounds like he was going to have to pave his parking lot, which he wasn't told to begin with. In his zoning scheme, whatever he's regulated at, he's supposed to have a non-permeable surface parking lot. And so, and I told him that. I said, but, it frustrates me when he come before the board, and like I said, you've got everybody there from, not just the board members in the planning commission, but you also have, various other members that aren't on the aren't on the board, but you have the building inspector, code enforcement officer, which I would have thought would have known, what the zoning regulation and stuff was, and various other people with public works and things like that somebody should have known in my mind to tell him that was what was going to be required. Well, he didn't know that when he built everything, and then come to find out, like I said, 4 or 5 months later, they're telling him he's got to pave his parking lot and everything else, which in my mind is not good because you want to be as transparent and forthcoming with people as possible so that they can make an educated decision and not, go in and then keep getting strung along for more and more, especially when something's about a $50,000 expense. You start to get to a point where it's no longer viable. And people need to make that educated decision sooner rather than later so that they don't end up in a very deep hole. But the other problem with it that really frustrated me is when TDOT comes in and shuts down commercial driveways that are already there, the law says change in use. TDOT's engineer said change in ownership. It destabilizes property values.
Yes.
And so that was, like I said, that's what really frustrated me. By and large, and then I get to go into these meetings and asking questions and nobody really answer anything, and they're just like, you want to do something about it, and so by and large, I made the decision to run for alderman, and that's why. As like I said, I don't want people to ever feel like the government's not helping them. That's I think you should. I say helping. I'm not saying subsidize. I'm saying that you should be there to help them know what they have to abide by and do everything you can to help them do that versus try to come out and make things as exacting and impossible for somebody. TDOT's engineer tried to tell him that the only way he could have a driveway was if he did double unmountable curves and all this other stuff that made it very practically and financially impossible for him to complete. But once again, the engineer didn't care because he said it was an engineering problem for somebody else. Once again, what can you do with some of them? So that's my spiel. I just wanted to get how I actually got here, because there's a lot of people that have been like, "You're pretty young, you're not gray-headed and old." And so I just wanted to explain how I got to where I am now.
Well, that's
So,
well, that pretty much nails it. That's I'm sure y'all just heard. That's how Blake and I actually met, was over the Mason Roads issue. And I'll go a little bit further here. I'm not going to tap too much. What really kind of concerned me in that was in June 2024 Planning Commission meeting, which we have an audio copy of. That we actually got, it was a public records request. We had a copy of that. In that meeting, the mayor acknowledged that TDOT had threatened to withhold fuel taxes from the city of Lexington. And for those of you guys who don't know, fuel taxes, you go buy a gallon of gas, you pay tax on that there. Well, that money is allocated to help. It's supposed to go to TDOT. There's been some changes in it, but what happens is it goes to TDOT, and then TDOT disperses it back down to the municipalities and county, where the money is originated from, where that tax is originally collected from. And this money is actually used to fix our streets, pave our streets.
maintain infrastructure.
That's it, yeah. Stormwater, I'm sure you guys have seen when we've got major storms come through, if tons of rain, we got standing water all over the place. Well, that's what that money is used for. And what happened was TDOT, the threat of TDOT, they actually threatened to withhold the money from the city to fix these issues. And in that planning commission meeting, an audio recording is the Mayor Griggs, acknowledges that TDOT came down there and made the decision to say, when TDOT tells me what to do, I got to side of TDOT.
Right.
So not only did he leave Mason Roads, a citizen, a small business owner who's trying to get started, in a bad spot, he left the rest of us in a bad spot, because instead of sitting and say, number one, you can't withhold our funds, it's illegal for you to do so. He just kind of bowed down and was going to allow TDOT to run over us. I believe it was somewhere in September or October, was an email that was sent to the mayor from the legal department of TDOT.
I think it was August, actually, because it was pretty close in time to. It was either July or August. It was soon after Mason asked me for help.
That's when they sent the letter stating that they weren't not going to withhold the fuel tax.
Yes.
So eventually it came around, but that didn't sit too well. Like I said, we've got the audio recording of that there. It's kind of hard to load up an audio recording. I plan on making an MP4 file with at least that section of the recording so people can hear it. I just haven't had the time. All right, let's jump back in here with Blake on these questions here. We're gonna zip through them again. Which political party policies do you align with?
So, I guess by and large, I would say more like the Republican. If you have to delineate it between Republican and Democrat, that being said, I almost think a lot of times they're the wings to the same bird, the opposite wings to the same bird. So what I try to tell people is I'm pretty fiscally conservative and I'm pretty socially liberal. And when I say liberal, I mean more libertarian, not not Democrat necessarily. But what I mean by that is, like I said, I think we need to make sure if we're taking our taxes from you, the power to tax is the power to destroy, and that we need to be very, very careful with doing that. It needs to be very limited, and we need to make sure we obtain every value that we're actually getting from our tax dollars. I think we don't spend them very wisely right now. And so on the socially kind of liberal side, what I mean is I think the government shouldn't really by and large tell you a whole lot what you can do at home. I think that you should by and large have a lot of liberty to pick and choose how you want to live and oversee your life. The only, where you get to kind of the line is when you start to harm someone else. But outside of that, you should by and large be able to live and enjoy how you feel. So that's where I align with on those.
Budgets.
Yeah.
And let's get some clarity here for everybody. When you hear the term budget cuts, let me explain what that is, just so you know. Right now, we have an existing budget. It's for fiscal year 25-26. We have a budget. Now, you would think budget cuts as we go into this budget, we make cuts. It's not how it works.
Right.
How it works is they'll wait till next year when it comes up for the budget cycle and they start creating the new budget. So what'll happen is, let's say that this budget's at $10 million and the new budget comes in at 10.5.
Yeah.
So now they're going to want to cut some money off of that 10.5. That's when they're talking about doing budget cuts. They're not fixing this budget over here. They're not touching this one. It's touching the incoming budget. So it's a little misleading the way it says a budget cut, because that budget isn't even approved that they're going to be trying to make cuts on.
Right.
That's not an approved budget whatsoever. So, it's kind of letting you guys know that they're going to increase spending and they're going to knock it down a little bit.
Right. It's kind of a play on words.
Exactly what it is.
I mean, it's just like we just had a few months ago. We didn't raise your utility rates. We just cut the amount of standard water that comes with your standard rate that you have to pay.
Right.
Instead of having 2,000 gallons, you have 1,000. And so across an average household, which 90% of the homes that are on the utility system, it was going to go up $18 a month. Like, we didn't raise your utility rates. It's like, I mean, that's a play on words right there. But
exactly.
Yeah.
All right. With that said, how are you going to decide what is the best choice when given options for cutting a budget, and will you just share it with the citizens? So in other words, will you be transparent?
Oh yeah, 100%. Like I said, I think I believe citizens play an important role of not only in my mind, inspecting. If you have a problem, you should be able to voice it, and we should react to that. I think there's a large portion that we don't actually utilize from that because we don't have a very good system to take in things like that and actually check them all. But I think we need to look at what do we actually need versus what are wants, and we got to do a better job at separating those things out and cutting the wants out and focusing more on the needs. Like I said, we've neglected by and large our infrastructure for probably 20 years almost now, and that's why we ended up with a lot of undersized lines, a lot of pavement that, like I said, is probably 30 years old now and just falling apart because it hasn't actually had any scheduled maintenance done to it. And even with stormwater, I mean, there's a lot of drains and things like that aren't inspected or routinely cleaned out, and you have to have that stuff. At the end of the day, I want to make sure that the people we have in our departments and stuff like that understand that these are public, actual assets, and we've got to maintain them and not just let them, essentially dilapidate and go away. We don't do a very good job of maintaining pretty much any of the buildings and infrastructure that we currently have either. For instance, Brown Shoe Building or whatever, from my understanding, it's leaking and everything else. And so, we're going to eventually get to somewhere where it's almost like the Civic Center, where it has to be tore down in short order. We'll spend a lot of money to do that. And like I said, at the end of the day, it's a large space that, could maybe be occupied by some manufacturer or some type of shipping company or something versus just sitting empty. And like I said, us not able to maintain it.
But, and that, heck, I heard about the roof over there leaking back during last county mayor's administration under Eddie Bray.
Yeah.
The Brown Shoe Building roof was leaking, and it's still leaking because we don't fix anything.
No.
We just let it fall apart. We let it get into disrepair. We don't maintenance it.
Yeah.
And it's the same same thing with our schools. And I'm referencing county schools right now, but we have all these issues,
Right.
and we don't do anything to fix them until they get astronomically bad. Because when I mean astronomical, it gets to the point of how much millions of dollars to replace this stuff, replenish this stuff, to work on it.
Right.
I was having a conversation today about City Hall,
Right.
and for you guys who don't know, the old TCAT building is kind of up the hill from across from where Kaywood is at.
Yeah.
If you've been up 22 North, you'll see all the dirt work up there on the right-hand side past Co-op. That's where the new TCAT building is being built.
Yeah.
So what the city did was they gave TCAT All of that land up there, and then TCAT's giving them the building over here. So TCAT's going to move into a new building, and the city gets an old building
Right.
for some land, an industrial park. Back when this was being discussed, I'll just give you some insight. I had students who were actually out there at the TCAT building was sending me pictures and videos of just how bad the condition of the building is. And where the problem lies into that there is we're going to have to go in there and refurbish a building
Yeah.
to move a city hall down there.
Right. Not
I-
cheap.
It's not cheap, right?
Yeah.
And this is another capital expense. Where we're going to get money from?
Right. We're already almost $60 million in debt, so
Right,
Yeah.
and
we're about at the end of our credit line, if I had to guess.
Yeah, we gotta be getting pretty close.
At some point, we got to be.
and you know, we keep buying new vehicles
That's right.
and departments instead of, you know, if somebody's got to drive a heck, I'm gonna tell you right now, back where I was from, man, they had a early '70s K2500. Boy, that thing was military surplus. You couldn't beat that thing with a rock. It just ran and ran and ran and ran and ran.
Right.
Still driving that thing in the '90s.
Right.
People didn't care about the image. They were worried about the job, and they didn't want to waste money on it because they were trying to spend money on infrastructure.
Right.
I keep hearing this thing, well, we'd like to have nice new things. You know what? No.
Right.
You know what I'd like to have nice and new? Some roads.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
I'd like to have, when I get on my roads and it's pouring down rain, I don't want to have to worry about hitting mud puddles or standing water in the road.
Yeah, I say it's more like a lake than a puddle.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to see a gushing flood coming down here and a brand new road get washed away
Right.
because we didn't build it to specifications.
Right.
You know, there's all these things here that you look at, this expenses, and we're not prioritizing getting the right things done.
Right.
I'm sorry, but how could we afford to give raises when we got all these problems with sewer, we got problems with water,
Right.
we dealt with the discoloration of the water, never heard back, never got a clear answer on that there.
Right.
You know, it's one of those things like Tim Rose says, you know, people forget all about it.
Right.
And they just keep on doing the same thing. But that's what's happened here.
Right.
And we don't prioritize what needs to be fixed.
100%. And not only that, but we don't have any type of, it seems like any type of scheduled either, like I said, inspection or maintenance. And from inspection, you know, you can maybe have an event that triggered it, not just a time frame. You know, for instance, if we have a 6-inch rainfall event in a day, you probably ought to go check and make sure that your stormwater system isn't clogged up everywhere in main areas like that it essentially consolidates down into. For instance, over on Barnhill Drive where you know, she was complaining about that. And you go down there and look, and it hadn't been cleaned out in years. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, that's a problem to me. Like I said, we got to keep that because it ends up causing harm to property owners.
Right.
You know, at the end of the day, and it creates harm up here in the streets and everything else where we can't drive through them. You know, ambulance service maybe or fire service can't get through because once again, you know, it's a foot deep water, so they got to slow down. That's not conductive, and it also causes people to be reluctant to invest in the town. Because you come here and it's like, well, man, they don't take care of the infrastructure or anything else. Like, why would I spend a bunch of money, you know, if I'm going to end up with something that's just falling apart?
Right. I mean, the roads alone. When you roll in,
Right.
when you drive into town, you come in and you see these roads. I mean, that's the very first impression anyone's going to get.
Right.
It's just how bad the roads are here.
Right, yeah, and like I said, I don't know what happened with TDOT and the city with this maintenance agreement. I don't know if we got actually back on it or not. I was told we did, but, you know, I've also heard now that we haven't. So, you know, once again, just crazy. Which, you know, largely what that is they'll give us, you know, I believe what they were saying was about $100,000, $120,000 a year, based, once again, probably on our mileage of streets that are state right here in the city limits. But to maintain them, you know, when I say maintain, it's maintenance. You know,
Right.
when you got a pothole that comes up, you can fix it and, like I said, get some money back from that, or you already have the money, and like I said, you're able to fund that. Well, we haven't been doing that because, from what I was told, it wasn't enough to cover the expenses of it. And like I said, it's not necessarily supposed to cover all the expenses of it. It's supposed to be more of a cost sharing agreement
Right.
because, once again, the state roads, yes, they're state roads. They run right through the middle of our town. It's the main thoroughfare that, you know, all of us use day in and day out to move about our city. And so,
Right, and I know the argument comes along where people say, you know, you'll get one crowd. It's like over here, well, you know, that's state roads,
right,
and the state's supposed to maintain them. Well, yes, they are, but the state also has these agreements in place to be able to give us some money.
right,
Well, then that costs taxpayers money. Well, you know what? Any of the money that government has is taxpayer money.
Right, 100%.
But if we had to take, gosh almighty, I'm sure everybody would agree. Either the southbound outside lane coming down 22 from the high school up here to 412, or go down there in front of the post office in front of Kaywood. I mean, those roads are horrible.
Yeah.
If the state gave us $100,000 and this cost us $150 to do it,
Right.
I don't think anybody would complain about spending $50,000 of the money here
Right.
to supplement to get those areas fixed.
Right. Well, and not to mention that, but you can also go back to TDOT and, like I said, request assistance if it's outside of your capabilities or way outside of the amount of money that you're getting for that maintenance agreement. Like I said, it's just working with our what I would say is a partner on this adventure. Our roadways, like I said, should be something that we work together to maintain so that we can all enjoy it instead of, like I said, having roads that just beat you to death driving up and down on them.
Right.
I don't think it's rocket science, but for some reason it seems like it is. I don't know, like I said, if there's some type of, almost lack of a better term, pissing match between them or what, but we can't have any type of normal conversation or get anywhere with it. Like I said, we were out there with Mason for an hour and 45 minutes, and they kept pointing, see our maintenance agreement. Oh, our maintenance agreement will tell you who's responsible for this. Oh, see our maintenance agreement. And then, I by and large been telling them I'd love to see the maintenance agreement, before we even got there. So I thought somebody would have showed up with it. But then afterwards, was like, get it to me. I want to see it. I'll tell you exactly who's responsible. Well, about a week and a half goes by, and next thing you know, it's like, well, we don't have a maintenance agreement. It lapsed last year. And it's like, you sat out here at a meeting that it took us almost 2.5 months to schedule and get out here and do, and tell me, see our maintenance agreement, and then come to find out it's lapsed more than a year and a half ago. Like, it's just incompetence, like I said, grinds my gears. And so, like I said, how I was. I was fired up about it, because, like I said, it just blows my mind. And so I would like to be able to work with them, like I said, and not only that, but if we have to, be able to advocate to our senators and our congresspeople to, hey, we need help here. Our state representatives and congresspeople can be very influential if they're willing to step up and fight. That's sometimes come to find out a little more difficult.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I'm not afraid of a fight or.
You don't have to say it. I certainly don't mind saying it. We did. We actually, I talked with Brock Martin. You talked with Brock Martin. And we both met out there with Senator Ed Jackson. And it's just, it got us nowhere with TDOT.
Right. Besides, they were back down from barricading his driveways, but none of them have agreed to fix any of the stormwater issue out there, which, just to fill everybody in, the main catch basin on Mason's property is looks like somebody took a jackhammer to the side of it and cut out a 30-inch hole and put an 18-inch culvert into it, and then stuffed a bunch of tarps and plastic around the side of it, and now it's obviously over time degraded and it's fallen in. And so what's happened is there's sinkholes forming on his spot, but not only that, going down College Drive, so I got videos, I've sent them to you and stuff. It's all silted in. Every bit of the stormwater system down through there is silted in to where it doesn't catch any water. Anytime it rains, it just runs like a river right down College Drive out onto the highway. And so, being somewhat logical and common sense, I guess that's not in government. But I said, hey, why don't we fix this before he paves his parking lot? So one, we don't tear up his parking lot, and then two, at the end of the day, if we're going to extend this road and we're going to have low-income housing and a health department and everything, and we're going to increase the traffic load out here substantially, why don't we fix this before we do that? And maybe we can schedule it also when Jackson State's out. So when we dig up this road here, we don't impact people. And that's where my thought is. Like I said, I want to try to be as least impactful to people, but get the maximum value for our dollar. But we've got to focus on our infrastructure and not just continue to let it fall apart.
Right.
Because otherwise, it costs a substantial amount of money. Like I said, tearing up a road isn't cheap,
No.
Nor is it a fast thing. And that's why I'm saying we should do it sooner rather than later. Because otherwise, we're going to impact all these various things back here. And like I said, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But for an hour and 45 minutes, we don't think it's messed up. Got to saying they messed up, and then I would ask them, like, well, hey, I'm glad we got somewhere. You agree it's messed up? We don't think it's messed up. You just never mind, But so we did that for an hour and 45 minutes, just walking essentially chasing our tail.
Yeah, spinning wheels.
Yeah. So.
And just to let you know, I've been out there. I'll do it this way here so the picture don't confuse people. Okay, this here is the storm drain that's out there at Mason's property. Okay, water runs down in here. And this is like a long tube all the way down that water comes in.
Yeah.
I went out there on, it was back in April when we had the
Yeah.
first big rain.
Yeah.
I went down there, and the water is coming, and it's not going inside the basin hardly.
Yeah.
It's coming around the backside,
Yeah. It's swirling down there.
and it's coming down back here. Well, guess what? That long concrete basin in there, the water's not going in there. It's going somewhere else,
Yeah.
which eventually will create a sinkhole. Now, if you guys don't remember, there was, I'll get in trouble for this here. April kicked my butt. There was a sinkhole that came up on,
Fort Well over there.
no, it was on 22.
No, it was 22. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, 22
Over there by
above
Church
the
of Christ. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They had a sinkhole pop up there.
Yeah.
Um,
And this has got the same thing going on. Like I said, I've got videos of it, water swirling in to the road right there by a storm catch
Right.
basin, and where it's once again more than likely that the culvert wasn't actually sealed properly around it, and has allowed it now to once again wash out and degrade around it. And I'm sure it'll be a matter of time before it falls in.
Right.
You know.
And that goes back in, and you know, and I want to, while we're hitting on that there, I remember the last time 22 got paved, and this was from Crossroads down.
Yeah.
They had a long train.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Because they were milling it and
they
putting it
were
back in.
milling it, heating it up, and just relaying the same old asphalt back down.
Yeah, I think they were adding a little tar and maybe
Yeah.
a little bit of aggregate to it, but it wasn't
Yeah,
much.
wasn't much. Yeah. So it was a long train that came down here, and I don't know. Probably this was pre-COVID, right before
Yes.
COVID started.
Yes, it should have been.
Is when that happened. But and this isn't the first time I've actually seen 22 get paved. It's been paved once before when I first got out to Henderson County. And what I noticed then and what I notice now is there's a section of 22 right there between it's where the roads tore up between the high school and pretty much the Church of Christ, somewhere up in there, maybe a little bit further up. That's always got plumbing issues.
Yeah.
Always got stormwater issues.
Yeah.
And instead of us getting in there and fixing those things, that should be a thing. We should close that section of that street off and get that repaired all before any paving gets done.
Right.
Fix it all.
Right. Well, and my thought is too. Once again, let's be least impactful. We can probably find a time, maybe during summer break, where we don't have a lot of traffic on there from school and everything else, to
Right.
fix it. I mean, it's even just like the water line going up the hill to at Zimba's out there. I mean, that's busted 2, 3, maybe 4 times in the past 10 years. I mean, it's quite a bit. Once again, more than likely, it's too shallow. So, like, go in there and fix it, and let's put it down deep enough so it don't freeze and bust. Because by and
Right.
large, that's when it's doing it. But we don't have to do it. Once again, in an emergency situation, freezing weather, late at night, paying people time and a half. We can do it one where we tell people in advance, hey, we're going to shut this down, so you can kind of have some awareness to maybe navigate around it so that you're not impacted by a lane closure. And two, we're paying people a normal salary versus, once again, emergency time and a half,
Right, right.
where that eats a lot of our budget. And,
Another section up there on 22 is up there by right before you get to Hall Street as you're going down the hill. They are always doing work up there.
yeah,
There's got to be a problem there.
Right.
It needs to get permanently fixed. But I bet you that has been worked on probably 4 or 5 times since the road was last paved, if not more.
right,
Yeah, we're not looking at these things here.
right.
We're not prioritizing things. And if we're so focused on giving raises, which is going to be another thing up here. It gets down to the fact that we're not spending money on the right things.
Right. And we're not getting the value for our dollar. If I had to guess, and just put a number, I'd say we get about 30 cents to the dollar that we spend, it seems like. For instance, we're going to spend $400,000 on a playground over here in Southtown over there by Stanford Crematorium. I'll be real interested to see what actually gets put up for that $400,000. I can assume it's probably not going to be a whole lot. And so that's what frustrates me a lot of times. For instance, I've been told on that we're supposed to spend over 6 figures, over $100,000 on engineering for it, for once again a structure that's by and large engineered from the factory, from the manufacturer of it, where the only thing we may have to actually do any engineering on will be like the footers for it,
Right.
which is based on your soil type and what kind of load compression you're going to have on it and stress. And so that's why I struggle sometimes with the value that we get for the money we spend.
Right, man. And that's just like I think it was Mark Stanfield made a comment on Tim Rhodes' video the other day
Yeah.
about the
Amount we
salary
spent-
survey.
Yeah, amount we spent for it.
Yeah, I think we spent, I believe it was 35,000 is what was spent on that salary survey. And you can go right on MTAS, which
Yep.
is Municipal Technical Assistance Services.
Yep.
As Blake was talking about earlier. It's based on, it's pretty much run by law students out of UT Knoxville.
Yep, that's right.
And what they do is they come in here and they do a lot of, they're here to help.
Yeah,
And Mark made a comment. I just went up there and hit the Google and just clicked on MTAS survey, salary survey, and first page popped up was the one.
Yeah.
And it's free. It's a service that's provided to municipalities.
Yeah.
So why didn't we use that instead of spending $35,000? You know. gosh,
or just do it ourselves, like you said. Have somebody pick up the phone for maybe a day or two and call around to the local
Right.
ones and get some idea of what their pay structure is for various departments or employment type.
Right.
And like I said, at the end of the day, I don't think it's rocket science once again. But $35,000, I mean, that's
yeah, that would have got that
a
done.
third of a mile of paving, thereabouts.
How much stormwater repair would it done?
Right. Well, it depends on what you're going to do. Like I said, over there at Mason's, repairing that was going to be, because remember, TDOT, one of their recommendations was you could move your driveway 60 feet down, and I told him it was going to fall right on this, and he's like, well, you just have to move that, figure that one out. That'd be an engineering problem. It's like, you've got a culvert that runs underneath a 4-lane highway with a turning lane, and mind you, the catch basin's about 30 feet deep. So I was like, you're probably $250,000 moving in by the time it's said and done. Once you start going that deep, shoring becomes very expensive.
Yeah.
You start getting.
Yeah, and it's just it's hard to get these things across. Anyway, I'm monopolizing too much.
Yeah, it's all right.
Vehicles,
Yeah.
excessive use, unnecessary features.
Right. Yeah, I'm all against that. Like I said, I don't think we need anybody to have a lariat, cooled seats, things like that. I don't think you need to drive a King Ranch. Like I said, at the end of the day, like I said, it's taxpayer funds. Most of these people really, I don't believe need a take-home vehicle. Like I said, if you're doing emergency service work and things like that, or like I said, I can maybe even get behind understanding the police officers bringing one home and having visibility in neighborhoods and stuff like that. I agree with some of that. But at the end of the day, we have to understand, once again, we got to look at things in consideration of how much money we're going to spend and the value that we're going to obtain from it. It's very expensive from a maintenance standpoint for all of these, for insurance, for doing even just like tire, oil changes, simple things, outside of other maintenance that you have to do on them when they tear up. And it's a tremendous amount of money. So I think we go back to, once again, we either keep vehicles longer. I think they may have done a decent job when they purchased some of them from Helms up here. I think it sounds like they purchased quite a few like single cab, lower end, not just complete work model trucks. But I think they gave like $18,000 or $19,000 because they bought 5 or 10 from them. If we can keep those and maintain them and keep them up and stuff like that, and get over 150,000 miles out of them over 10 years or something. But like I said, when we burn up and down the roads, going back and forth from work to home, and you're not actually going anywhere to do a service or project somewhere else, so that adds up a lot on our bill fast.
I don't remember who. I think it may have been Chip that was talking about, the people who's on call,
Yeah.
and not the supervisor per se, but whatever supervisor is going to be the one that's going to respond, and not every damn body's going to respond.
Right.
That's the reason you have on-call people.
Right.
Because if everybody's going to respond, then why would we even pay for somebody to be on call if everybody's going to respond?
That's right.
And at that point in time frame, keep the vehicles down here and everybody can come down here. And I get, maybe closer. You know what? You may or you may not.
Right.
How many times does it really happen?
Right.
I mean, I guarantee nobody keeps a log of it to be able to get that information.
Probably not. Yeah.
So, I think that's just an argument against it when we're actually spending money on things.
Right.
We're kind of in agreement with the way that goes. Next thing coming up, about Tim Rhodes trying to find out about the why they were told something during the meeting in the budget cycle last year.
Right.
Should department heads be held accountable for misinforming board members, aldermen, and for not answering questions?
I 100% believe that you should be held accountable for especially something like that, where we ended up having. I don't know where the problem lies as far as if he was giving false information, the department head, or like I said, if he just truly didn't know or whatever. Like I said, my thing is you need to at least come to the realization that I gave you wrong information. I feel like there's a lot that can be said about somebody that can admit they're wrong or that they have gave wrong information. Whether it was by accident, somebody gave it to them by mistake. But I think we need to start rooting out the why and how this thing's happened, to make sure that it, one, doesn't happen again, and two, paint a picture of what we're wanting for people to give to us. I believe a lot in performance-based management, where you give benchmarks and you give people ideas of what you're shooting and striving to obtain, and you do everything you can to help people get there by, maybe different softwares or different procedures or whatever it may be. I'm not trying to make things hard on people. I do a lot to try to help people make their life easier. That being said, though, if we show you the picture, and in 3-6 months you're not seeing it, you'll probably see the door. At the end of the day, like I said, at some point you have to move the needle, and like I said, if we're not moving, we're staying stagnant, we're falling behind, and we're ending up with more and more problems building up. And so, like I said, I think that it's very important that we have integrity within the departments, and that we know for sure people are being factual and upfront with us, because like I said, we're spending the taxpayers' money. This is you're a public servant. We're doing public funds and dealing with public assets. We need to make sure that we have factual information. And so, yes, I'm big on holding accountable. And same thing for me. If I get something wrong, if we decide on something, and we realize it's wrong, I'm fine with coming forward and saying I made a mistake, and working to correct that. At the end of the day, we're all human. Hindsight's 20/20. A lot of times you're looking at things, almost at the time through a binocular lens sometimes, and so you may not always see everything that's playing a part of it. And so, like I said, I'm big on, once again, looking back at how things are progressing over time, and if we realize 3-6 months down the road that it's not where we want it to be, or it's not addressing the problem that we thought it would, that we start working on different solutions to start moving the needle. Like I said, at the end of the day, we can't just continue to someone like Roger Loftus said, we just give them money, and like I said, that's all we do. Give them money. We don't want to micromanage them. Like I said, I'm not looking to micromanage. Like I said, I think the department heads and everybody over there probably know a lot more about what they do than I do. And so I don't want to come in there and think anything like that. I just want to make sure that we get down to the basics of continuing to spend money wisely and not throwing it at, once again, frills and things like that, and that we obtain the value for that money. Like I said, at the end of the day, we're, like I said, probably 30 cents, 40 cents on the dollar that we spend. I want to make sure we're at least probably at the 90-cent mark, because by and large, if we can utilize our money that we spend better, we'll get more for the buck. And right now, like I said, we're going to spend a bunch of money on an aggregate storage facility. I don't remember what it was off the top of my head, $400,000, $600,000 for a pole barn. And literally, that's what it is. It's a pole barn. And that's
It's crazy.
5-6 miles worth of paving. Do we really need somewhere else to store it, or is there something else we could utilize? For instance, we got the hangars over there already at the Public Works Department that I'm not sure why we couldn't possibly use it. Put some concrete bunks in there. It may cost us $2,500, $4,000 for some concrete bunks, and you can put gravel in there up to it and scoop it out when you need it. But at the end of the day, it seems like a lot of times right now everything is, we got to get a new building, we got to get new
And they want everything new.
Yeah, and we got to buy new property too. We can't utilize the property we already have, and that also constrains the tax base even more, because once again, city and county, they don't pay property taxes, right? And so at the end of the day, the more and more that's owned by them, we're reducing the tax base more and more. And a lot of times this is pretty prime real estate. It's not something that's off in the backwoods and not the most valuable. A lot of times it's central, right in the middle of town, commercial property that once again could be a very good tax source from not only property tax but sales tax revenue and things like that too. So
I'm in agreement with you on that. All righty, pay raises. The question here was, of any other employer that's paying 23% and 23% pay increase in the 4-year period?
Yeah, not without taking on some extra responsibilities or credentials. That's for sure. Maybe if you went from a manager to a director, and took on double the responsibility, I could potentially see that with some people. But at the end of the day, if you're doing the bare minimum, and that was cumulative, that wasn't compounded.
Right.
Like I said, that's a tremendous amount of money.
Right.
And we also have to consider is too, when we raise these salaries, a lot of these people are still on the pension plan. They're not the newer ones that weren't allowed that option. And so we end up having to put back more cash into our reserves too real fast to make sure that we're fully funded. And so like I said, that causes a strain on us very fast. And kind of like Roger said, we had COVID money come in and we just spend, and now we're sitting here like, oh, well, how are we going to make the shortfall up? How are we going to continue to sustain this elevated salary level and all these other things that we've spent money on? And yeah,
All right, it looks like we're back on. Sorry about that there. We dropped service for a minute. Again, good old Facebook.
But I think performance-based management, by and large, should dictate, who gets our the raises and stuff like that. I don't believe in percentage raises across the board. I think, like I said, a lot of times what happens is it ends up leaving the people that are on the lower end of the pay scale almost used as pawns. To say, hey, they're almost at the poverty level. We got to give people a raise. We got to give people a raise. And then we do a 5%. Well, that's $2,000 to a lot of these people. $1,500. Across their paycheck, not much. By the time taxes and everything are taken out. But people on the higher end of the pay scale, they're getting $5,000, or more sometimes at a time, and that costs us a tremendous amount of money. We need to do a flat rate, or like I said, by and large, once again, I think the department heads probably know better, and it should be able to once again have some performance-based management principles put into place where if you take on more responsibility, by and large, you ought to get more pay. You go out and you get an extra certificate or license, for instance, maybe to operate our sewer plant, you ought to get a pay raise. And at the end of the day, too, I think we take care of the people that take care of us. You have to be willing to do that. Otherwise, like I said, we end up with low morale and we end up with people that don't care and everything else. Because right now, when everybody across the board is getting pay raises and stuff, why go ahead and take on any extra responsibility? I got a 23% raise. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I ain't got to do anything extra. Yeah. So you end up with people that just continue to do the bare minimum because there's no incentive in place to actually continue to take on more or progress. And that's not very good. And so, like I said, I think it causes low morale, and we need to change that within our department. I want, our department's one that we support them, but that, like I said, you have to actually be in there and provide value for us too, like I said, and be a good public servant to us, and not just somebody that, like I said, continues to ride the clock and do the bare minimum, and you just continue to get essentially pretty lavish pay raises versus what everybody else got during this time. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Gotcha. All righty. That goes into that there, and that goes into that there. All right, let's. Property tax increases. Yay or nay?
Oh no, I'm against property tax increasing. The only way, like I said, that I would agree to a property tax increase is if, like I said, the state's done come in and said we're at your front door knocking and we're coming to take it over. Like I said, I think at the end of the day, there's a means you have to stay within. People need to be cognizant of how big our tax base is and what we can afford, and stop living like the Joneses. There's a lot of the phrase of chasing the Joneses and live like the Joneses. I think a lot of people like to live in fantasy land. You want to see out here on Friday night light football and stuff. We're going to have a $50 million stadium. Like we can't afford that. That's outside of it. And so in order to keep property taxes low, we got to live within our means. And that's why I, by and large, I said government needs to stick back to the basics of where we focus on infrastructure and not a lot of these frills and things like that. And we haven't done a very good job of that. And not to mention, not only that, but once again, we're going to do a splash pad. I don't remember how much money we spent on the splash pad, but you look out there and it's like, what is this thing? What in
You mean the one by the pool?
Yeah,
and I'm assuming that it's closed now.
Yes, I think the only thing you could do is rent it out for parties or something for the last month or something like. It closes around the time school starts back. But what frustrates me is you go to, for instance, comparable cities of like Savannah and Paris and go over there and see their splash pads and like, it's nice. It's way different. If anybody hasn't been over there, I've got 2-year-old daughter, so she loves all that stuff. Like I said, it's way nicer than what we have, and I'm not really sure why. We once again we're pitched this grand plan, and then you go out there and you look at it and you're like, this is far from grand, but we spend a lot of money.
Yeah, we did.
And so that's why, like I said, it frustrates me when I say we don't get the value for our dollar that we spend.
No, and you're right about that. that happens quite often.
Yeah, but I'm against property tax raises. Like I said, it hurts our most vulnerable. I was talking to a gentleman today that's a little older, and he said that, you know, one of the things he's concerned about, you know, they're obviously on fixed income, both of them drawing Social Security and stuff like that. And you know, his wife, you know, was mentioning, you know, if he passed first, he's older than her, that, you know, she wouldn't be able to afford the home. Her monthly income wouldn't allow her to, you know, survive, to pay groceries, to pay utilities, and to take care of property taxes. You know, she would be forced out of her home. And like I said, that's sad. Like I said, people need to be cognizant that, you know, there's a lot of people on fixed income that are living in less than $1,200 a month, and like I said, you know, that don't go far in today's age. Like I said, me and my wife went to Sam's Club and bought, you know, 17 items the other day, and it was $350 something, and like I said, that's not much.
No, that's, I mean, it's. I don't go to Walmart. April does, but heck, I mean, we generally shop at Clarksburg at the grocery store up there because they got the best damn meats around here.
Right. We go to J&J.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, I like home meat. Like I said, I try to support local people.
Up on, they're off Union Cross, aren't they?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we used to go up there. I loved it when Janelle was up here. And the reason we shop up there is, I mean, heck, it's not that far from us. Love going into the stores. Always got stuff, and there's certain seasons and stuff that we buy while we're there.
Right.
But anyway, generally we don't get out of there for less than $100.
Right.
And I mean, everything's more expensive, and people are struggling.
Right.
You know, there is a divide when you hit that certain age of retirement, and then, you know, when you're, you know, if you're an adult and, you know, you're working at maybe a convenience store or fast food restaurant, you just, you know, you're making enough just to get by, and that's it.
Right.
There's just not a lot of extra, you know, and I've heard people argue, well, why don't they go out and get a better job? It's not always easy to go out and just get a better job.
Right.
When you're living paycheck to paycheck, you can't afford that gap of a week or two with no money coming in while you're starting a new job.
Right.
Do you have the qualifications for it?
Right.
I mean, let's just be real. I mean,
Occupational licensing is
right.
taking over.
Yeah. There's different jobs, and there's different skill sets for those jobs.
Right.
Doesn't mean anybody's better than anybody else. It's just, you know, it's just everybody's qualified at certain things, and that's why it should
Right.
we have to look at things.
Well, and like I said, I was saying with occupational licensing, like I said, you know, you look back 40 or 50 years ago, and it was less than probably 25% of jobs required, you know, a certain either amount of college hours or years work or things of this nature in order to obtain a license or a permit to essentially do this job or to work in this type of job. Where now it's somewhere around 70%. And so, like I said, it's been a pretty drastic increase. And that's also what makes it harder for people to go from job to job, because at the end of the day, if it's not 100% within that job type category and you've got to go get another license for it, well, you may have to go back to school to get that, or you may have to go work under somebody for a year as an apprentice or do something like that. And that, like you said, can be financially straining for some people.
You know, and also it stifles a lot of businesses from having a larger workforce
Right.
to pull from.
Right.
And, you know, there's a lot of things that, you know, you have to take into consideration when you look at the overall scope of things.
Right. And the other thing around here is there's just not a tremendous amount of jobs. You know, we just had 8 close. You know, that was what, 400 something jobs that left.
3 something, yeah, I think 335 somewhere in there.
Yeah. So I mean that's a lot of jobs to leave.
Yeah.
And like I said, that's, you know, where are those people going to go now? I know some of them have found a place at NIDAC, and, you know, there's a few other places that are hiring. But, you know, that's a large employer that's now gone.
Right.
We need to do a lot to try to bring more people back here to provide employment, because by and large, too, we do have an aging population, you know, here in the city. So when, you know, eventually people start to pass and stuff like that, and we have this younger generation that's not here anymore, you know, what's going to happen? There's not jobs, you know, they're moving over to, say, Milan, Medina, Humboldt, you know, places like that, Jackson, where, you know, you can buy a $250,000 home. It's brand new, you know what I'm saying, move-in ready, open concept floor plan, things like that, where, you know, same money around here by and large is buying you a 1970 home that, you know, by and large is more compartmentalized, which, you know, people aren't my age as fond to, and also normally needs some work, you know, and it needs a little updating and things like that. And so, you know, you're looking at that. You're normally driving to Jackson 45 minutes from here to work, or, you know, you could drive 20 minutes from one of those cities. Brand new house. You got other amenities around from food and entertainment. You know, it makes it hard to want to stay around here unless you are, you know, real big into hunting or living outdoors and stuff like that. because we do have a quieter, more quaint town than Jackson and Milan and Humboldt. They're growing a little more rapidly than we are. That being said, though, if we don't get some new housing development in here and stuff like that, people can have that's somewhat affordable and stuff like that, I don't know where a lot of people are going to go that are my age, but I can tell you it's not here.
Well, and see, and that's amplified by the increase in property taxes.
100%.
Because, real estate here has gotten inflated.
Yeah.
It's just, I saw this crap when I was in California.
Yeah.
When I was stationed out there, I bought a house in San Lorenzo. I paid $163,000 for it.
Nice.
And that little small thing. It's
Right.
about 1,200 square feet. They call it zero lot lines.
Yeah.
Because I could reach out my window
And touch the next one.
and text my neighbor's window,
Yeah.
hand them a cup of sugar if they needed it. And I could not bring my mower along the sides. I had to bring it into the garage, my single car garage, and walk out the back door to get my mower from our front yard to the backyard.
Yeah.
And just to tell you, I did not have a gas mower.
Right.
My yard was so small. I found at a yard sale old Sears push mower
Yeah.
with the blades.
Real, yeah.
Yeah, real mower. Got up in there, sharpened them up real good.
Yeah.
That baby cut grass fine.
Yeah.
Took me about 20 minutes to cut front and backyard.
Yeah.
And then I had an electric weed eater because I didn't need anything any bigger.
Right.
13 months later, I transferred out of Alameda. So I put that house up for sale. I got $273 for it in a week of going up.
Yeah.
That was inflated.
Yeah.
That was the problem is that was inflated. Now I keep hearing about how our prices here have gotten inflated from all these people coming from California and from wherever they're coming from.
Right.
As you're stating, there's cheaper housing in Madison County than there is in Henderson County. So I don't buy into all of that there.
Right.
Has it played a part? Obviously it has.
Right.
But that's not all that's going on, and I think that's one of the things that we're not really being
Yeah. Well,
kept abreast of the truth in that matter.
right. So I will say I think part of that is driven somewhat by lending, somewhat. So and this is pretty in depth, but when you have lenders out here from banks that are giving a lot of money to various individuals to buy up properties, essentially about purchasing assets, right, that are not for production purposes, just purchasing assets, you increase that pool drastically. So we don't no longer have just people that are trying to buy their first home; they're trying to buy their 40th rental property here in
Right.
town. And so, like I said, those people by and large have a larger and faster access to money. You know what I'm saying? These
Right.
people already have a capital built up, and so that's why you have a lot more competition seeking out these homes. A lot of these people are wanting to purchase homes that are, the sub $250,000, so they can turn around and rent them out real fast. I've heard that there's homes renting over there behind.
Anyway, they take that house and they turn around and sell it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're kicking in and out here. We'll continue. Hold some spending in there and find ways to cut.
Right. I think that's where we need to be at by and large. We need to focus and make sure that we're running as efficient as possible. Like I said, I think last time I said yes and no on that one. I don't agree with a bunch of rate increases. At the same time, if we have to have them to make sure that we are viable and sustainable, that's our last option. That's what we'll have to do. But I would, like I said, very much try to everything we can first to limit spending. We got to cut back spending and make sure we get back to the value that we're obtaining the full value for the dollar we spend. Right now, though, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was it 170 miles that was undersized water line?
Yeah, I can't remember something.
I say
like
it
that,
was a
yeah.
tremendous amount. And so what's happened is we've had neglect for decades now on maintaining a lot of these things and keeping up with what is required or what is needed, I guess, for the demand that we're seeing now. And so things are expensive now too. If we'd have done a lot of these repairs 10 years ago, it would cost us probably 30%.
Pennies on the dollars compared to what we're paying now.
Yes, pennies on the dollar, especially too, not just from a material standpoint, but a labor standpoint too. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so now we're spending a tremendous amount of money trying to catch up. And like I said, it's bad. Like I said, we're in a pretty rough spot. I'll be honest. We're trying to maintain the infrastructure we have because it is falling so far behind at this point. We're essentially like not in the Stone Age, but we've neglected for so long.
And I'm glad you put in that perspective because, I hear a lot about growth. We need to have growth. We grow the tax base. It will help bring in money. Let me say this. Yes, that's true. That is a true statement.
Right.
But if we've got a strained system that we know is already is fragile,
Right.
we don't need to add more strain to it.
Right.
We need to fix that,
Right.
and then we can add more to it.
Yeah.
What concerns me that there is, I understand the need for growth, but I'm going to just take for instance a situation. Let's just say somebody, because I've heard the term about us being kind of a bedroom community, especially the Westover area, for Madison County, Jackson.
Right.
Okay. Let's say somebody, and how many residents do we have that live in Lexington but drive to Jackson?
Right.
I mean, there was even a push to trying to get more housing here to cover jobs in at Blue Oval City,
Right.
which, I mean, I just don't know anybody that's going to be driving that 70 plus miles a day
Right. I agree.
one way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, at some point people's time is more valuable than a dollar bill.
Right. Agreed.
And when you're losing 2.5 hours doing a round trip,
Yeah.
the time just doesn't make it worth it.
Right.
But with that said, is if we've got people who are actually in Jackson, they're probably going to stop and shop in Jackson.
Right.
And so, we're not going to gain a whole lot of revenue from sales tax. Will we gain some? Yeah, of
Right.
course we will. Will we gain some fuel tax? Yes, we will. Property tax is probably one thing too that people look at. But on average, I mean, if a new house is built, what are we going to get out of it? Maybe $1,000 a year,
Yeah.
maybe. I mean, so if 100 houses at $1,000, that's
I agree.
100 grand. It's not adding a tremendous amount.
Right.
And those 100 houses, how much strain is that putting on our infrastructure?
Right.
So we have to look at the fact that there's going to be, our growth has to be very slow and controlled
Yes and no.
to accommodate, in my opinion.
Right. Well, and so I think that's what frustrates me, though, is I think that developers would be willing to incur a lot of those expenses. Like, for instance, in Nashville, I've done a lot more over there with them, as far as developers are willing to take on introducing a stormwater system, putting in the electrical, running all this stuff out and everything. The problem becomes here, though, is when we try to find out what's there now, what can we tie into it. It's at least from what I've seen, most of them don't know. They don't get any feedback. They don't get any help. And so, I mean, from a development standpoint, or from a developer or contractor standpoint, I don't want to go somewhere where I'm taking shots in the dark of, like, do I even have the power supply here? Do I have the water supply here? I mean, that's why we had somebody that come out to the North Industrial Park and was looking at building a facility there, and by and large found out that largely our employment base is coming from outside the county. I believe they said that more than 60% of the people that were working, and a lot of them were coming from outside the county, which isn't necessarily here nor there a bad thing. But that there wasn't enough water supply out there, and there also wasn't enough capacity for sewer either. We addressed some of the sewer capacity going down Old Huntington. They just did that $800,000 project, which was like 1,400 feet of 12-inch line we put in. And then on the water supply thing, we've now got at least a water tower that's in the process of being put up over there by Dollar General on Highway 22.
Let me stop you on that there with the Old Huntington. Why on earth was that a priority at Old Huntington? What was the priority there with that 12-inch? Do we not have other things that should have been done before that there?
Yeah, so I'm not 100% sure on that one. So I guess what I struggled with on that one was when they come to us about it. Remember the smell down there? They're talking about the smell.
Yeah.
We got to do this project because we're going to address the smell. And then it was like when they got to asking, well, is it going to fix it? And they're like, well, we don't know until we get done with it whether or not it's going to fix the smell. But once we spend this $800,000, it will fix it. Well, like I said, done some talking with some more people that work there and members in the community stuff. And also aldermen, and it sounds more like that this was done as part of the expansion of that in North Industrial Park over there. When we expanded it out, that there wasn't enough sewer capacity down through there, so it all flows down Old Huntington over through there. It goes down the Beach River and then goes down Old Huntington instead of, because I just assumed all of it, the utilities ran down the highway, right? I mean, that would make logical sense somewhat, like everything else.
That's kind of what I would have thought.
Right, but they don't. And so that was, apparently everything else is 12-inch line down through there, and it flows into a 6-inch line for that 1,400 feet. And so they finally upgraded it to this 12-inch in order to be able to allow additional processing of sewage materials out there at the industrial park. Is what I was told. Once again, like I said, we heard one thing at the meeting for the justification for the spending, and then I heard another thing afterward. When I
Right.
got to asking around.
Well, I mean, if
We're not gonna get people out there at the industrial park if we don't have the ability to supply.
right, I mean,
their
but
needs.
I'm looking at this stuff here, as you've gone down Old Huntington,
Right. Oh yeah, it blows my mind.
you got all kind of curves.
Yeah.
The industrial park, hell, it could have been flat, come right down Timberlake Wildersville Road, hit Natchez Trace and drop back in, and you got a shorter damn run.
So I don't know what size pipe they have out there. So I know right
But,
now
I mean,
the sewer stops right there at the where the industrial park entrance is off of Timberlake Wildersville.
Okay.
That's the cutoff, I believe, right now. 'Cause I know right across the highway is, like I said, county, and they don't supply any sewer out there to them.
right.
And so, if that was one thing that I guess kind of blew my mind, though, is we bought all this land and we put in all these extra pads and done all this other stuff out there, and then, like I said, we kind of slacked off on the actual infrastructure to supply all this stuff. And so, at the end of the day, when that industrial company come out here to debate on whether or not they wanted to set up shop here, they said you don't have the stuff we need, so we're on to the next. And so, like I said, we do need to have it there so we can have people that come in. One thing that Gordon said is he would like to build a facility out there for somebody to move into. I don't agree with that. Like I said, I'm not a yes man to anybody, but I'll tell you the reason why I don't agree with it. I think most people that are actually doing commercial, industrial things like that,
Specific needs.
they have specific needs, and they need to design a building to that, and retrofitting a building isn't cheap necessarily a lot of times. And so a lot of times it's easier for them to come in and throw these things up. I mean, you get out there on some of these facilities, like we went out to a Pratt & Whitney facility that was being built in Oklahoma. It was just over 1 million square feet, so I mean, it's a big building. But I mean, you had it in the dry in less than a couple months, and like I said, it doesn't take long. Tilt wall construction is pretty fast, and so at the end of the day, I think you let them, but you gotta be able to go out there to these people and give them a reason to come here.
Right.
I think we're in a good. You're talking about the 70 minute drive or whatever to Blue Oval. I don't know. I don't believe we're gonna have people like you said going down there driving to and from every day.
I
There
don't
might
think
be
we have employees there, but I believe that we have an opportunity with OEM manufacturers in here.
right. Agreed.
That
They're suppliers.
right.
Yeah.
I could see us having suppliers here.
Yeah, agreed, and that's how I think we need to try to market to, like I said, like the Denzos and things of that
Right,
nature, Motion
right.
Industries, other people that, like I said, are heavy suppliers for them. Obviously they're not going to build a $1 million+ square foot facility over here, but if we got a couple of them to come in, and build some buildings and employ some people. And explain to them why, hey, come here. Like I said, we're lower probably taxes than Jackson, and we're lower than Memphis, and you're not gonna have the crime here and stuff like that. We got good employees. We got a lot of people that are really willing and able to work with a vast skill set. We got TCAT right here now, and I'm hoping we can, kind of sidebar, hoping we can have TCAT work with the people we have here, the facilities, and get people more on the job training, not just in a classroom at TCAT,
Right,
but actually
right.
get them some real life experience. Do some type of whether it be apprenticeship or something in the classroom, where they have some time out there to maybe meet a potential employer and get some exposure in the real world. And so, like I said, I think we can use that as a marketing tool to get people more interested in coming here.
Right.
But I'm afraid, like I said, if we don't start getting people in here and start filling that stuff up, that's a lot of land we own out there that, one, we're not getting any tax revenue on, and two, we spend a tremendous amount of money. My thing is, when we look at spending, by and large, we need to look at the time horizon for when we're going to have it paid back. You know what I'm saying? 'Cause we,
4 or 5.
right.
And we're ahead of the game on that there. I believe Brad said that I think the original budget was somewhere around about 53.
Yeah.
And we're coming in at 48, and we're
Right.
what do you say, a year and a half ahead of schedule?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Kudos. Like I
Hell
said,
yeah.
That's awesome.
I'm tell you
And
right
like I
now.
said, and Jeff Graves, he was one that spearheaded it at first and got that ball rolling and got us some grant funding for that. That I believe covered more than half of it. I believe it was a match of $27 million,
Yeah,
if I'm not
yeah,
mistaken.
yeah.
And then, like I said, Brad's done a fantastic job implementing it afterwards.
Yeah. Those two, I'm going to tell you right now, have done a fantastic job. And Graves put in a lot more time than what we probably even know.
100%.
I don't know. I'm going to say he probably worked on this thing over a year before any plans were even presented to the board on this is where we need to be.
Right.
I think I was in the meeting when they actually I asked him to start digging into it, and then I think from there he just kind of picked it off. And if you really think about what that one person did, um, I mean that's a huge project, huge undertaking,
Yeah, massive.
and everything has to be done to a T. And he just did a hell of a job making it happen. So,
Right.
Jeff Graves, you're my hero, bro.
Right.
You did the county, even though I'm not going to get it because I'm not on LES. You did the county.
But there are some that said that do not have a hold the people in a high standard. I'll say that. Like I said, I think as any type of public official or person working for public service or anything, like you're a public servant. Like I said, that was one of the things that drove me nuts with Mason. Like I said, we had this engineer out here who, by and large, wasn't out here helping people, known as the hammer, looking for the nail and everything else. And I'm like, man, that just blows my mind. Like I said, I don't think that kind of attitude or character is very becoming of a public servant. And at the end of the day, like I said, you're supposed to be out here, helping people. Like I said, you need to be somewhat humble. Like I said, I also don't think, we need to have taxpayers out here berating people. At the end of the day, if we can all have some type of mutual respect, a little common sense goes a long ways, I think, sometimes with that. But, be respectful to them. When somebody calls and says they have a problem, and we go out there, like, go up, knock on the door, say, hey, I'm just out here to, look at the problem that you have. I see the issue, or maybe you haven't yet, and hey, can you show me around to what you're talking about? A lot of times, people understand that you have other things that you have to get to and aren't going to sit there and try to, monopolize and make sure that, their house is taken care of and not going to be subject to damage from flooding and stuff like that, or that has a sewer backup flowing back into their house all the time, things like that nature. So take care of the people. And like I said, at the end of the day, I think if you take care of the people well, the people will in turn take care of you as well. So I think it's a mutual respect thing. Like I said, easier said than done sometimes when things in morale kind of got so low. People will turn around and look like every time you turn around, my taxes increase, my rates increase, and everything. And you go outside and it's like, where's the value going?
No,
I'm not seeing the return on the essentially investment in the city, and so I want to make sure that
Especially when you don't have a choice.
yeah, exactly. So I just want to make sure once again that we get back to a functioning, in my mind, society where we continue to take care of the things. Government should be limited, and it should be focused on taking care of the necessities that we all agree on, and not just the ones that are a few, and not just the wants that we have. So,
All right. I am going to turn this here over to you. There's the camera.
Yeah.
There's the people.
well, like I said, I think you heard a lot of it there. Like I said, I'm not anything that's just crazy or special. And like I said, I'm not going to ask anybody for a vote. Like I said, I just want somebody's consideration when you go to vote. Like I said, I'm not gray-headed, not old. But like I said, I do have some experience for some opportunities that were presented to me that I have learned a lot of different things. I've sat in a lot of different rooms with a lot of very knowledgeable people and have been able to learn and grow. And like I said, I think I have a very good skill set to help us navigate some of the issues we have coming up. So I've got a degree in accounting. I've got majors, or majored in accounting. I've got minors in supply chain finance, economics, and marketing. So like I said, I understand a lot of things, and I can see a lot of times the whole picture. And that helps a lot of times, where instead of being very compartmentalized and looking at things very narrow, you can see how it's going to play out. How can we afford this? How can we continue to push out and continue to have growth and utilization of it? And how can we put in different types of performance-based metrics or benchmarks to see whether or not we're progressing in the right direction, to see that we're actually accomplishing the things that need to happen. Like I said, I think some of this stuff is basic or simple, but sometimes maybe if you've never been exposed to it or seen it, it sounds foreign and it sounds crazy, or it sounds maybe Roger Loft say micromanaging, but that's not it. Like I said, I've never been somebody that's tried to micromanage. I've also tried to be as reluctant as possible to try to tell people how to do their job, especially when I really don't know what their job is or what they're doing, but to give them the tools and means to do their job more efficiently and more effectively. I think, like I said, if we can do that, we can lower our expenditures and get ourselves back in the line to where we're not seeking tax raises, we're not seeing utility rate raises, and we're still having a good service provided to us, and not one that's faulty or continuously having issues. And so, like I said, I just want to get back to the basics essentially with government, where we take care of our people, and like I said, in return, I think if people are taken care of, like I said, we can take care of the people that take care of us, and like I said, we can continue to increase morale within the departments and even within the city. So I think we've got somewhere to go, and we can take that together and make it there. Like I said, at the end of the day, though, we have to have smart people that get into office and that can help us to obtain funding and stuff like that. You know, we were talking about before, there's a lot of grants out there that, you know, we can qualify for, that we can have even people at MTAS or CTAS, which is the County Technical Assistance Service, help us obtain. And like I said, that can take a huge burden off of our small, limited, you know, tax population or utility rate service population. And so I want to make sure that, like I said, we can do everything we can to qualify and obtain those funds and utilize them wisely, so that once again we end up with the best value for our dollar. So that's my spiel. If you have questions or concerns, so you can find me on Facebook. You can reach out to me at mitchellforalderman.com or mitchellforalderman at outlook.com. Excuse me. Like I said, my cell phone number's out there on my Facebook page too, 731-695-3273. Like I said, I'll do everything I can to try to help people, and like I said, by and large, that's what I want. I want a government that, like I said, is out there to help people, and it gives people factual information. Because at the end of the day, I think we'll have a lot more people willing to invest and give their all for this if they knew and they could see what we were wanting to have, and we had people that also could provide them the relevant information and not mislead them. I think that's what stifles a lot of investment and growth, and has people reluctant to actually continue to invest here. So if you need anything, reach out. That's my 2 cents. I appreciate y'all coming and talking to us. So I'm not sure if there's any other questions that popped up. So I tried to keep up my phone, but like I said, it was watching, this person's watching this and that and everything. So I kept dinging. So I don't know if there's anybody on there that's left any questions
I
that,
haven't
you know.
seen any more come across.
All right.
Alrighty. Well, that's going to conclude this edition of the Hidden Agenda. We are still working on doing some updated equipment, trying to get past problems that we've got with Facebook. We're going to work on that some more, see if we can get it fixed. Thursday night, we have Blake will be back on with us, along with Candy Davis and Patrick Cherry. They're going to be coming on. The three of them are kind of in alignment with each other, and they're kind of going to have a share now. Blake, you'd mentioned something about doing like a small meet and greet before that happens.
Yeah, exactly. Were you able to talk to Weston?
I haven't talked to. I haven't had a chance to talk with them yet.
Yeah.
I'll take and talk with Weston and David about that.
Said I'd like to try to come up here and try to be out here. You know, maybe 5:30. I think we're trying to do it around 7, so 5:30. Try to come out here. Maybe hang out around the sidewalk. You know, right here in front of Princess Theater and stuff like that. So if we can get Weston, like I said, maybe do some popcorn and stuff like that. So I'll pay for that. Like I said, I'm gonna have people come out. You know, bring your kids, bring your wife. You know, ask questions. Like I said, enjoy some time out downtown. Like I said, and once again, you know, reach out to me, get to know me. Like I said, I think there's a lot of people that have said that, you know, oh, he's rude, or he's going to go out here and he's going to, you know, make things difficult. And like I said, that's not me. Like I said, you know, I try to fix things as much as I can, instead of just try to run people down or run things down. So
you just get in trouble for hanging out with people like that.
That's right, the wrong crowd. That's what I was told before. So
anyway,
you know me, I don't care. I don't listen.
That's right, man. That's right. So look for Thursday. Like I said, we'll do an update post. We're going to see about that there.
We'll get some information out.
Yeah, I'll be at the. I've got a County Planning Commission at 5:30, which I'll be streaming that, and then be back over here for the 7 o'clock.
Yeah, I forgot that was on Thursday.
But yeah, we're gonna work and see if maybe, I think the Princess is showing a movie that night. So
they should have the popcorn machine up and running then.
Yeah, what Blake was saying is we're gonna talk with David and Wes to see if they can possibly get in here earlier, so he can take and you know, he'll pay to get some popcorn popped up, so you guys can just come out here and meet him. I guess Candy and Patrick as well.
Right.
I'll
try to get over there, yeah.
Kind of a meet and greet, and get to have some Princess popcorn. That's the best popcorn in the world.
Best popcorn, yeah, I've ever had. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Anyway, we're gonna take it. Like I said, we'll be back up here Thursday at 7. Bank on 5:30 Thursday afternoon.
Yeah.
We will be live streaming the
Planning Commission.
Planning Commission meeting.
Yeah.
For you county folks, there's some
Interesting things on there.
yeah, I'm going
say
to
the
tell you
least.
right now. Every time we've ever used the term zoning, we get beat up about it because, oh, this is not about zoning. It's not about zoning. Well, on this agenda is a zoning resolution.
Right.
So stand fast, county. You're getting ready to start seeing some zoning coming in. It looks like
Right.
that they'll pass a resolution to bring forth to the commission to vote on. So,
Right.
yeah, you may want to definitely pay attention. If you can make it, it'll be at county courthouse.
Right. 5:30.
5:30.
Yeah.
And then next Tuesday, we're going to be doing part 2 with Alderman Tim Rowe.
You need to get out there sooner rather than later. You can go online to govototn.com if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
And you can
yeah.
also go up to the election commission and they'll help you.
register. Yeah.
And so like I said, either one, but if you're not, or if you haven't updated an address or whatever, that now is the time to do it this week and first part of next week. But you better get to it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I think next Tuesday is the 12th.
If I'm not mistaken, yes.
So yeah, if you plan on voting, if you want to vote in the city election,
Yeah.
and you are not registered, or if you're not sure if you're registered,
Right.
govototn.com. So that's GOVOTETN.com.
Yeah.
Or go up to the election commission there at the old, I don't remember what bank it was.
Used to be Veteran Outdoors.
About Veteran Outdoors when
Yeah.
Bruce had it, the last I remember it. Kind of across from
Los Portales. And
Los Portales and Car Wash right there. Mr. Wizard, I think it is.
Don't catch me lying.
Yeah, but yeah, that's where it's at. It used to be an old drive-through bank branch over there.
Right.
But go up there and they can help you get signed up.
Yeah.
But after the 12th, you're not voting in this election. So
Right.
if you want to get on, make sure go get your paperwork done at either the election commission or go to govototn.com. Early voting starts on August 22nd.
Election Day, September 11th.
Yep. So you'll have time to vote for the early election, or you can vote on
Election
on
day.
election day. You will have to go to your precinct to vote.
Yeah, that's correct.
So you will not be able to vote if your precinct is not the election commission. You will not be able to vote there.
Yeah.
Now you can vote there early voting. That's the only place you can vote early voting.
Right. Up till the 5th, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I
off
think
the
it's
top of my
September
head.
5th, and then
Yeah.
after that, there will be September 11th is the election day. So if you're not registered, and if you have any questions or any problems or having trouble with it, feel free to shoot me a message. I will be more than happy to help you out with it.
Right.
You're not hanging out there by yourself. You've always got somebody out there to help take care of you. But that's it. Y'all have a wonderful night, and we'll see y'all next time around.
Yeah.